Thank you so much for joining, folks, today for this webinar. This is a global webinar, so most of you are joining from different parts of the globe, and we're really happy to have each one of you here. Today's webinar is actually an extension of the first webinar. We had a good number of people voting for this topic, so you can see that Alex is ready, and Alex is back with us today. We actually talked about the power of ChatGPT in the first webinar. Alex showcased the application of ChatGPT in 6 different fintech-specific use cases. However, today, which is the part 2 webinar, we actually are going to go the exact opposite direction and talk about the risks and limitations of ChatGPT for the same 6 fintech-specific use cases. Alex will also be sharing solutions to fix some of the risks that he'll be talking about. Now, before I actually hand over to Alex completely, I just want to say that we do appreciate your questions, we value your questions, so please don't hesitate to ask as many questions you have related to ChatGPT or today's topic. Do use a Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window. And if you're not able to take any of your questions during the webinar, we have 15 minutes reserved at the end of the webinar just for Q&A. This webinar is going to be 30 minutes long. There's a question: is there a possibility to watch the recording of the first? Absolutely. We will be sharing the link of both the webinars with you, and I can post the YouTube link for the first recording, definitely. So I think that's it. Alex, over to you, and everyone, please enjoy.
Thank you, Nadisha. Welcome everybody to this talk of the series of ChatGPT for FinTechs. As Nadisha said, previously talking about the power of GPT for FinTechs. Today is about the risks and limitations that come with it. I'm going to give a quick quick recap of the previous 6 use cases that I have shown in the previous talk that you see listed here. The first one was about finding the right financial product or service via a financial or FinTech AI assistant chatbot, where you could talk with, and it would help you find the right service for you or the right product for you. The next one was to query that product or that service that you have found as a user to allow you through the chatbot to have a conversation and interaction with that product or with that service that you found, so you don't have to look yourself through the documentation or through the product pages and all that. So you can just ask the chatbot and it tells you what you want to know about it. Third use case was an automation of customer service, where the user can just come with common complaints or common issues or requests like changing their address or changing their phone number, and the chatbot would understand it and ask appropriate questions like, what's your new phone number, what's your new address, and then update the data in the system, all via a conversational interface. The next one was a online banking voice assistant, where you could do things like money transfer via voice commands, just having a conversation again with the chatbot or with the AI assistant. And it would ask you how much money would you want to transfer, where to, and all that, and ask you some security questions and stuff like that. And then, of course, would have to be connected to a system to execute the transfer. Then we talked about fraud detection through behavioral security, which was a use case where we basically built a model that looked at the conversations that the user or the customer had with the AI assistant, and specifically for the online banking assistant, and checked whether there's any suspicious behavior, things like foreign bank accounts that are put in as a target for the transfer, or very high amounts, or when the user is very brief or very impatient, kind of atypical or suspicious behavior that could be detected automatically through the language understanding of the model. And finally, KYC, a model that would look at the conversations that the AI assistant had with the customer, with the user, and then try to judge things like sentiment of the user, level of satisfaction of the user, and even generate a little sketch of the user's personality, almost like a persona of the user, all automatically through models or AI assistants powered by ChatGPT. Okay. Sorry, that was actually that slide. That's why I was irritated. Let's first talk about prompt engineering. This is the way of how you build such AI systems, such models. How can it actually be done? Basically, what you do is you give a prompt to the model that kind of customizes it for your use case and kind of tells it what you want it to do and how you want it to behave. And these prompts are typically structured in the following way. You first give the model an identity. You say something like, you are Finn, a friendly and professional AI assistant for my bank. So you give it an identity. The next thing is you give it some instructions and say, act, for example, in this case, act as a customer service assistant for my bank that can identify the intent of the customer or the user as belonging to one of the following categories. And then you provide the possible different categories that the assistant should detect. And one could be change personal information, or file a complaint, or resolve a technical issue, or interest in a product, or anything other. Like when you call centers, you often have like press 1 for this, press 2 for this, and all that. That's basically that. And then there's always a button for or a number for anything else. And you always need that as well. Otherwise, you will force into one of the flows. And then you additionally say, once the intent has been identified, gently nudge the customer to provide you with the information relevant to fulfill the request. For example, if the customer says, like in the last talk, we had this example of a customer just saying, I moved. And then the chatbot is smart enough to understand, okay, moving means that you probably want to change your address. So it asks the user, okay, where did you move to? What's your new address? I understand you want to update your home address. And then the user has to provide the address, and the chatbot understands it. And finally, the third component of a prompt is typically a list of examples. For example, this one here, where the assistant says, hi, I'm Finn, how can I help you today? The user says, I'd like to change my phone number. Assistant says, sure, what's your new number? User provides it. And then the assistant says, okay, I updated the phone number. Is there anything else I can help you with? And typically, that's just one example now. Typically, you provide a whole list of examples for a good prompt to really, really nudge the model into behaving in the way you want it. Okay, so this is basically the core of how you customize your own GPT model. So we have this prompt being constructed out of identity, instruction, and examples. Then let's see how this works, actually. So you send this basically off as an API request to, for example, OpenAI. If OpenAI and GPT-4 is the model that you want to use, there's obviously others as well. But the point is, the model runs on some service providers' infrastructure. That could also be Microsoft Azure, which also hosts the OpenAI models, or it could be Google infrastructure with BART or other big language models. So the model runs there, and it generates a response. And then that is the message of the assistant that is replied to the user. Maybe the welcome message, hi, I'm Finn, how can I help you today? So you do have basically the prompt, and you have the messages. And those two things together comprise the context of the model. The context is always what informs the model about what to do next and how to behave. And that it needs the identity, the instructions, examples, and then also the history of all messages so far. So if the user message comes in, that just goes into the context as well. And another round basically of the conversation begins. You again ship that over, that content, that context to OpenAI. OpenAI runs the model, which generates a new message for the assistant, which is appended to the messages and becomes part of the context. And this is just how it goes on and on and on. This is basically the core of how it works. Now, of course, that is just one GPT model that does one thing that you have provided in the instructions or have specified in the instructions. like the customer service assistant. However, for real life products that shall be productionalized and really put in front of real users, you typically need a bit more complex systems, which is kind of an orchestration of multiple different customized GPT models that each do some specific task, or rather specific task. And I want to quickly dive into that a little bit now. So what is written here on the left side is also what I'm going to say now, so you don't really need to read through this. This is more like for later. So let's say we have our custom GPT, this kind of big black box here, that is like the overall system, like the system that we want to deploy, that we want the user to have a conversation with and do whatever we want it to do. So in comes basically a user message, and out should come an AI message that is appropriate. Now, if we look at the ingestions, basically at the inner workings of this black box, we could structure it like this. We could say, okay, first the user message needs to be checked whether there's sensitive information in it, because we might need to treat sensitive information differently. We might need to save it in a separate database, or might have to flag it or mask it before we save it to the database or something like this, or anonymize it. Another thing that you could do is incorporate an emergency detector, which would look at the message and check whether this is an emergency situation that the user is talking about. The user might talk about, they can talk about anything they want, right? And they will talk, probably some users will talk about anything they want with your assistant, even if it's not the use case that you have intended. So you need kind of a process for what to do in certain situations. And emergency situations are one of those that are kind of critical. So if the user says, somebody just broke in my house or something, or something is on fire or so, then you should detect that and should directly refer them to call 911 or something like that, instead of going through your business case, right? Another thing is a sentiment analyzer that you could incorporate that would look at what is the user sentiment in that message or in the whole conversation so far, what's the mood, and you could also put in a intent detector that kind of identifies specifically predefined intents, things like, for example, I want to delete my account or something like that, that are like a separate flow, or that like a very clear specific flow that you want to go into then. So just so it's clear, each of these orange boxes now basically are an own GPT model that is like tuned or instructed with identity instructions and examples to behave as the specific component, to be, for example, an emergency detector. You would then say, okay, you are an emergency detector. You have those instructions, like you should find out, or you should detect if the user has an issue with fire, or with what else did I say before? Yeah, with burglary or something like that. We have actually implemented this. We have like a whole list of, I think, 30 different emergency cases with also subcategories. So there's a lot you can detect actually in that way. Okay, so you have this whole array of analyzers that kind of scrutinize the incoming user message, and then they all when they're done with their jobs, they basically forward that to the response generator model, which would then take care of generating the appropriate response. Now, in the case of a semantic search scenario, like for finding the right financial product or the right service, or for finding documents in a huge document database, you would connect this to or you would incorporate a semantic searcher, which can also be a GPT model. And then that one connects to the database and fetches basically those items from the database, those product descriptions or those documents or those service descriptions that best fit semantically the conversation with the user so far. So the request of the user that is kind of extracted from what the conversation has been about. And then that goes to another model, which is a ranking model, which basically takes that short list of results, of best fitting results fetched from the database, and kind of ranks them in like highest relevance to lowest relevance, and then hands it back to the response generator. And that one then actually produces the AI message that should come out in the end. But before we return it, finally, we first also scrutinize the AI message for a couple of different things, like, again, a sensitive information detector, because we might not want, or we will probably not want the AI to leak any sensitive information that it shouldn't leak, which is one of the risks, as you will see later. So you could say, okay, I reject this message. We should not send it to the user because, the user shouldn't get that information. Another thing is you could put in is a compliance checker, which is a model specifically instructed and designed to basically check whether the output message is compliant with a couple of regulations that you define or that are government defined, that need to be complied to. Another thing could be a moderator model that basically looks at things like, is it appropriate or is it a harmful response? Things like it could be a violent response, or could be a racist response, or a sexist response, or it could be a lack of empathy if the user is like really sad or something. There could be users that are really just lonely and are happy to have somebody to chat with that feels like a human at least. That's why the assistant actually has to be able to show some empathy. Or users get their credit card stolen and are super upset and irritated and needs some comfort basically. So you want a moderator that kind of makes sure that the message is empathetic, non-racist, non-sexist, and all that. Another thing you could do is add an explainer module that basically prepares an explanation of why this result or this message has been given to the user now, in case the user asks. You could have a user interface where you get the message, and then you have maybe a little button in the corner or a question mark or something, which when you click will provide you with an explanation why you have been given this response. Especially interesting in case of recommendations where you are looking for something like a search scenario and you get recommendations. You might, as a user, you might want to know why you got this recommendation, especially if you don't agree with it. And in general, to build trust from users, you need to be able to explain your decisions as an AI system. Okay, so if all these basically say thumbs up, approve the output message, then you actually deliver the output message to the user. Yeah. Now that we have digged into how these individual GPT models can be prompted with prompt engineering, and then how like an overall custom GPT system can be built by orchestrating them in this way. Now I want to talk about really the risks and the limitations that are there, and how they can be remedied with the help of these systems on subsystems. So what I will do here is build up basically a table with 12 different risks and the according remedies. So one of the first risks that people think of and that have been raised early on already is about content quality in terms of inappropriate or harmful responses, like I already alluded to. Remedies can be those. We can just rely on OpenAI's guardrails. They are putting in a lot of effort, of course, to also prevent these things. So you're kind of guaranteed more or less that the worst things won't happen. Like it shouldn't really be actively violent or producing hate speech or sexist speech or something, or sexist responses. So you can actually rely on that quite well. They also, of course, keep improving that and keep on working that with all the feedback they get through the ChatGPT interface. What they also provide is a moderation model, which is a specific separate OpenAI service that is just targeted, just designed to do that, to do a moderation of content. Or you could build your own moderation model by using ChatGPT or GPT-4, which is the actual model underlying it, and then instruct it accordingly and say explicitly with the instructions and the examples what you want and what you don't want. Another risk could be non-factual responses containing made up or wrong information, which is of course a problem, and which is also something that has been raised a lot in the past. However, it's getting better. It's happening less also by the work of OpenAI and all the competitors. But what you can do specifically, you yourself, or like as somebody, as a user of such models, you can instruct a model specifically to be truthful and to actually admit if it doesn't know something. Because if you don't do it, like by default, ChatGPT tends to always want to give a response. It doesn't really want to disappoint you, basically. And so it's trying really hard to just give some response. And if it doesn't actually know what you have asked for, it just comes up with something. Yeah, but if you tell it that it's basically okay to be wrong, or no, not to be wrong, but it's not okay to be wrong, but it's okay to not know something, and then just admit it, then it will behave accordingly. Another thing you can do is that you actually inject knowledge into the model's context. Like for the case where you want to chat with your product or chat with your service description or your document that you have fetched through semantic search, you do exactly that. You inject that document or you inject that product description into the context of the model, so it's actually available for it to base its responses on that. And you instruct it to base its responses on it instead of coming up with something. So that's that. Another risk is in the case of semantic search use case or recommendation use case, you can get poor results, poor recommendations that don't really fit the user's request very well. And the things that you can do is either a hybrid search, or you can do both things, of course. You can do a hybrid search where you combine a classic keyword-based search. So you have your database and your items in your database, and they have all keywords as tags, basically. And you have your conversation with the user, and you extract keywords and tags from that, and then you try to match with the stuff in the database. To implement basically a keyword-based search, but then you combine it with a semantic search. Semantic search, I have used it already quite a lot. Not sure if it's actually clear what it is, but a semantic search is a natural language processing based search of things where you put in text, and the text gets transformed in a representation that contains really the semantic meaning of that text. And then you can find, if you have done that to all your items in your database, and you also do that to the conversation with the user, then you can basically find what are the items in the database that are semantically closest to the user's request based on the conversation. So that's conceptually completely different than classic keyword-based search. The other thing you can do is what we already saw in that in the upper right corner, that ranking model. You can build such a model to judge the relevance of the search results, basically by telling it, okay, based on this conversation with the user and based on this product description that we have fetched from the database, how good of a fit is it? And then let it return some rating from 1 to 10 or something. You can just do it really like this, just instruct it like that, and it will give you a reasonable judgment of how well those fit together. The next thing is biased responses, which can lead to discrimination. That is a tricky one, really, because they come from the model being trained on a huge chunk of the internet, basically, and whatever it has been trained on, whatever biases are in the data, will manifest somehow in the model's behavior. So that's really a tricky one because, of course, like billions of text documents that OpenAI has used to train that model, it's really hard to check them manually by humans and ensure that there is no bias in it. So I really doubt that they can afford that or do that they actually look at each single data point that they put into the model. So there will just be some biases kind of trained in or taught in into the model. And ways to tackle that is to basically to make sure to retrain the model and to refine it with specific cases where there's bias being shown by the model, and then tell it this is a bad thing, don't do this. And then when it's not showing some bias, you tell it it's a good thing. But that's how it works, and that's how OpenAI basically is trying to eradicate these biases, and that's more or less all you can really do, because it's really deeply ingrained in the model. And of course, you can also build a bias detector or something that kind of tries to instruct the model not to be biased, but that is a really tricky one to do. So I think that is probably the trickiest risk to circumvent, and there you probably have to just rely on these models being trained better. The next one, outdated knowledge, lack of real-time knowledge retrieval. That's a big limitation that has been always out there. When you compare ChatGPT to Google, for example, like if you want to know something, you just ask ChatGPT. It's really convenient. You just get the response of what you were asking for. Different than Google, where you have to go by yourself through the search results and find what you're looking for. But the big difference is that Google is real-time and has live search basically through the internet or close to live search, while ChatGPT can be 1 or 2 years old, the knowledge that it has. So that is a limitation. And what you can do about this is to actually retrieve knowledge from a third-party service like the Google search. They have an API that you can use. So you can incorporate it into your custom GPT system, like you see in the upper right corner. You can incorporate a module that does like this external search through Google, and then gets the results, and then you ingest those results into the context of the model, so the model then has them available to its knowledge, and then it can talk about them and present them to the user, and the user can interact with the assistant, asking anything about these results that is in the context. Another thing is high costs, kind of an economical issue, because high costs of these accumulated API requests that accumulate when you have such an orchestration of many different customized GPT models, like in the orchestration in the upper right corner, you have how many is it? I think 11 different modules. Each of them is a individual specified GPT model, and whenever you use them, they cost something, and you pay per word, basically, actually per word that you send to OpenAI, and also per word that you get back from OpenAI. So the whole context, meaning the identity, instructions, examples, and then the whole conversation so far, you count all the words, and that's how much you pay, more or less. And it's around, it depends on the model really, but it's around like 3 cents per 1,000 words or something. So it can accumulate, but luckily there's different models that are provided by OpenAI, and you can actually optimize for costs by not always using like the most powerful GPT-4 model that is underlying ChatGPT for all these little tasks that are in the upper right corner. But some of these tasks can be solved by smaller, faster, and cheaper models, but less capable, but maybe capable enough to do that specific task. However, the response generator, that one in the middle, that definitely should be the most powerful model, because that's really about the quality of what comes out in the end. Now, a couple of user experience issues. High latency of responses is another issue. Of course, if you chain all these models, each of them has to generate something like an output or a response or a judgment or something. And it always takes time because these models are huge structures. They just take time to execute. And of course, that accumulates if you have this whole chain of models. That's why in the plot in the upper right corner, you see all these checkers or analyzers for the user message, all these checkers for the output message. They're all next to each other, which shall indicate that they can be executed in parallel. You can each of these checkers execute at the same time, and then they all come up with the result at the same time. So you only basically have a latency of 3 times a model execution, because you have all the uppers, then the one in the middle, and all the lowers. If you exclude now the semantic searcher thing, instead of having 13 times the execution time of the model. And another thing that you could do is build a request response database where you basically store requests of users and responses of the AI. And if a user has a similar request, then you just fetch the response that you have computed previously, basically for another user, or you maybe just you just adapt it to the current case. And you can do that with similarity search again. Another user experience one is inability to learn from use. That's a common misunderstanding that people think if it's AI, then it learns when you use it. And in some way it does, but it's more like OpenAI collects all the requests that are done to their models, and then at some point retrains a new GPT-5 model, like the next generation or something. And in that way it learns, yes, but it's not like your product that learns from it. It's more like OpenAI's product learns from it. But what you can do is, if you want it to be like personalized or kind of be smarter every time the user uses it, is that you build up a user profile. Like the users have an account usually, and there's some information about them. You might also figure some other information out about them that you can collect. And you also have the past conversations of your users with your AI assistant, and you can collect those, and you can do things like construct a personality sketch of the user or something, or like a persona or something like that. And you can inject that into the context whenever that user is talking to your AI assistant, and then that would ensure that the assistant is kind of adapted to the user that it already knows in a way. Another one is explainability of decisions. I've been talking about this before with the explainer module there. It's important to be able to explain outputs from AI. Also in the FinTech use cases specifically, I guess, for auditability. It has to be, I think it's a legal requirement at some point. And for that you can build an explainer model, as I said before. And finally, legal challenges, legal liability and compliance with regulations. You can to some extent rely on OpenAI's guardrails again. They already built stuff in like rejecting to give financial advice or legal advice or medical advice. It's getting harder and harder to actually get that basically from ChatGPT and all these models, because they are limited or restricted on purpose to not do that. And then you can build this compliance checker model, as I said before. Oh, sorry, there's one more. Leakage of sensitive information, and for that we have the sensitive information detector module that can detect that and then judge whether it's fine to send that message or not, or to store that message or not. Okay. Almost half an hour now. I have a short live demo, just showing you a bot in action or an AI assistant in action that we're working on currently, and it is built for the Scottish government by a company called Insights Driven. That is our customer there, and we work together in a partnership to build this assistant that is supposed to help Scottish citizens find the right public service in Scotland very effectively online. And I kind of modified it a little bit to serve for this talk. And I'm going to show that now. So I'm going to start that conversation. And it says, "Hi, I'm an AI assistant called Finn. I can help you find a variety of public services in Scotland. How may I help you today?" And I could say something like, "I need
Alex,
financial..."
just that, sorry, I think you are not sharing the right screen.
Oh,
Still-
I'm not. Oh, sorry.
Thank
Oh,
you.
damn it.
Everyone, please participate in the poll that we just shared at the bottom. Thank you.
I'll share the right screen then. It should be this one. Can you see?
Yes, Alex.
Can you see this? Yes.
Yeah.
I have to execute this and show you that ugly thing that I didn't want to show you. Okay. So this is like a trimmed down version of my development environment that I use to develop these AI assistants. And it's initializing now, just taking a little bit. Should be ready soon. Let me try one more time. Always with the live demos. Yeah, please participate in the poll so we know we get some feedback from you guys. What you think is most tricky and risky to do with ChatGPT on FinTech. Okay, let's see if we can start it now. Not yet, still initializing. Sorry about that. Maybe we can ask some answer some questions in the meantime that you guys have. Let me see if I can see. Okay, there was only one question so far that I can see. Oops.
In case you folks are curious, the legal liability is the most voted severe risk, which is interesting. But yeah, definitely who haven't yet participated in the poll, please do so. We'll definitely be sharing the results with you all later on. And if you have any questions, please do so. Feel free to type in your questions and we'll pick it up now. Alex, is the demo something that you want us to go ahead with?
Yeah, I'm a bit surprised it doesn't work now, but seems it doesn't work. So yeah, let's just stop here. And yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have if I get it working in the meantime.
Thank you so much, Alex. I think it was a really great presentation. Thank you so much for saying yes to do this again. Folks, if you don't have any questions, then we can end here. But if you have, now is a good time to type in your questions and ask us anything related to ChatGPT, not necessarily with risks and limitations. Okay. We have one question. In case of legal liability, is OpenAI responsible for the answers of my application, or am I?
I would believe that it depends on the contract that you would have with OpenAI. If you have a specific product, you probably wouldn't have. I mean, I'm not a legal person. I'm not really qualified to answer that. But I don't think you would have a specific contract with OpenAI. You would probably just have the terms and conditions and all that. And I think in there they probably exclude their liability for things like that. So it would be on you to ensure that things don't happen that shouldn't happen. And yeah. But I agree that is one of the biggest risks, the biggest issues. Yeah. So I think if you make sure that it doesn't do things that only humans should do, there's still a lot of use cases that you can use it for, like just finding things, extracting information from things, interacting with your products in a conversational way, also doing like triage of customer service requests, all these kinds of things that are non-critical in that sense are really good applications. Fraud detection. I mean, you can always flag it and then send it off to a human to check, just like just a model that a system that just flags suspicious stuff, and it might be wrong, but in case it flags something as fraudulent, potentially, a human would look at it anyways and decide whether that's true or not. What you always should do, of course, is that you implement some monitoring. Is also called machine learning operations, and monitoring is part of that. That you make sure that you frequently or constantly actually check how your model actually performs, how your AI performs, which means that a part of the traffic that goes to it should always also go to a human, and then should be processed by a human, and then you should compare what would the human do in this case, what would the model do in this case, and in the end, what you have to guarantee, of course, there's also a gray zone and legally, but in principle, you have to guarantee that your model is not behaving worse than humans. I worked previously in a company where we did skin disease detection and diagnosis with AI models, with image processing. So users would take a photo of their skin and it would diagnose what kind of skin disease you have. And research was done there in that area, and it actually turned in the legal area, and it turned out that the FDA in America has approved AI diagnosis as long as can be proven that it is at least as good as humans. And you can prove that because you get that image from the user, from skin disease, you send it to your AI, and you send it also to a panel of 5 different dermatologists, and they all vote on it, what it is, they all diagnose it, and then you compare, and then you basically measure the agreement. And if the AI model is more agreeable than each of the individual dermatologists, because they usually don't all agree with each other, then you can have actually proven that the AI model is as good as them. And then it is legally possible to use AI models even for such medically critical things.
Thanks, Alex. We do have 2 more questions. And so, are there any recent or just general studies in regards to user trustability with the addition to text to speech or even animations, like a complete face instead of a simple text in and output?
Yeah. I think so. Did I understand right? The question is whether adding also a face or giving the AI a face would increase the trustworthiness and all that. Yeah, I think in principle that might be, and there are services out there and providers that do that. But there is also this uncanny valley issue, which is like when you get very close to like a human face, like a very photorealistic human face, but not quite yet. So like something is just off, then it becomes suddenly very creepy. So it's actually better to stay away from that uncanny valley right before you are perfectly human, basically, and be much more abstract or be much more like toy-like or something, more like a robot face or yeah, just like a cartoonish character instead of trying to look human. But yeah, there's a lot of yeah, but of course it's pretty tricky as well to get the whole body language and all these things right. And specifically for the Scottish government case that we're working on, they focus on accessibility. So one of the reasons they want to have this AI assistant is because it should make discovery of things, of services, much more accessible, because it's much more easier, and also yeah, can be used via voice, so you can talk and it talks back. So for blind people, it's a really good interface. But there is also body sign language, which is like, you know, the just the hand signs that are done instead of speaking. And there is actually also providers that do that. They provide avatars that do the body sign language for the text that you put in. So you could actually have such an interface as well with the user.
Very interesting. Thank you, Alex. So the next question is, are we allowed to use ChatGPT for a daily office assistant, like inside office? And will it hamper because of the confidential data from customers? So can we actually find a solution for that?
For an office assistant that is like accessing internal company data, like internal documents. Yes, that can be done. We have actually built a prototype for this as well, where documents on Google Drive would just be made available through the chat through a Slack assistant, like a Slack bot. So you could just chat with the Slack bot and ask, hey, did anybody in a company work on this? And then it would find the right documentation for that, load it into the context, and thereby make it available for you to ask any questions about this. And then it will say, okay, yes, I found that this person has worked this time on this project or on this issue, and yeah, ask me anything you want to know about this project, basically. And if it has access to the project data, then you could just ask, yeah, what was the budget? What were the challenges? What were the what were the solutions or something? So we have built a bot like this. Of course, the problem is, I think what the question also went to is the accessibility issue, like, sorry, the access...
The confidentiality.
Access control, yeah, confidentiality. Yeah, not everything should be available to everybody. But of course, you can incorporate that. You can like, you would have an identity of the user that is using the chatbot, and you could connect the documents with access roles or access policies. And then you could basically pre-filter the results by only the things that the user is allowed to access. And then the chatbot would, for one user, maybe would answer, yeah, we have something there. What do you want to know about it? And for another one, it would say, no, sorry, I don't have anything about this. Or I don't have anything that you're allowed to access. But maybe in a bit of a nicer way.
We do have two more questions, and folks, we are actually aware that it's past 30 minutes and even past the extra 15 minutes, but if you're still interested, we're really happy to continue. So this is a question. Sorry, yeah, Alex.
The demo would be working now, so I can quickly show that it's just very short.
Actually, Lucas had that request. So, but if you want to first answer the question, or you can answer it with the help of the demo. Basically, Lucas wants to know if we have any example of banks or FinTechs which are already using advanced AI in their products.
I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, but yeah, we do hope so that it's the future. So there is a lot of potential. So
I think so. I think it's becoming a more and more common and accepted interface, also more trusted by just with the experience that users will have, that chatbots are becoming much better and much more capable and more trustworthy than and useful than they used to be. And companies all over the place are implementing that. And yeah, I think banks will too.
Yeah. This is the last question, actually, and then I think we can straight away go to your demo. And if anyone is interested, please do stick around. Are there any legal regulations that require a ChatGPT model to identify as such and not impersonate a real human?
Yeah. I actually have have a couple of more risks in the collection that I prepared for this talk, and I had 25 different things. I just presented 12. But the most relevant ones. And one, I also had that risk in there, that lack of transparency, maybe that people might think they talk to a human, and don't even know that they're talking to an AI. And I don't know about the regulations in that area, but I think even if there's no regulations, it should be always stated clearly that this is an AI and not a human. I think it's just disrespectful if you don't do it. It's like yeah.
And with that, actually, we have answered all the questions that you've asked. But if you still have any questions, do type in. And hopefully the demo will take another max 5-10 minutes, Alex. And
yeah, not much more.
Thank you so much. And over to you, Alex.
Yep. Okay, can you see this again?
Yes.
My mouse and all that. Yeah. Okay. So I just started this conversation here. It introduced itself here as Assistant, as Finn, and says, I can help you find a variety of services in Scotland. How may I help you today? And I will say, need financial advice. And it is taking a bit long because it is all this complexity that has not been optimized for latency and stuff yet. But now the answer comes. I understand you're seeking financial advice. Could you please specify if you're looking for general financial advice, debt management, or advice related to benefits and allowances? I will just say general advice. Are you looking for advice on budgeting, savings, investments, or something else? And I would say budget. Are you looking for services online, or would you prefer physical location? If so, could you please tell me your location? It is asking this question because it has already in the background, based on the conversation so far, fetched all the services that match my request so far. And it has found that some of those are online services and some of those have a physical location. And that's why it's asking this question. And I will say physical. And I'm in Clydebank, which is a city in Scotland. And you see, I don't have to really make full sentences, which is nice. And I can also have typos and all that stuff, of course. It's really semantically understanding me. Based on your location needs, there are 3 most suitable services: debt money advice, Clydebank, money advice for carers, and approved money advice in Dumbarton. And then there would be the URL that I can click to get to the website of those. And that could be, that case basically can be, that whole use case basically can be transferred to anything that you want to be searchable, discoverable through such a conversational interface. And now what I want to show here in this demo basically is the ability to explain things. And I can ask it, why did you suggest number 1? And there's nothing implemented in it that does some specific parsing of, okay, if it says number 1, then I find the 1, and there's no logic implemented by me to understand it. This is just itself understanding, if I say number 1, that I mean the first one there. And it's gonna explain me why it suggested that. The debt money advice service in Clydebank provides advice on money and budgeting, which aligns with your need for general financial advice focused on budgeting. So both these things are picked up. They can assist you with dealing with creditors, setting up payment plans, and so on. This device can help you manage your budget effectively. So there's a pretty good explanation why it suggested that, and that explanation now is based on the conversation with me and also based on the description of this service, and produced on the fly, generated dynamically to align those two. And last but not least, I just want to show that it will not give me personally, or like the AI, it will not give me financial advice. Can you instead just give me advice now? And then it should say, it should reject it in some way. Sorry for any confusion, but as an AI, I'm here to help you find the most suitable public services based on your needs. I'm not equipped to provide direct financial advice. However, I can certainly help you find the right service where professionals can provide you with the advice you need. Would you like me to continue with that? Yeah, so that's the two risks, basically explainability and legal liability or compliance that I wanted to show here. So that's the end of the demo. Any more questions?
I guess now we are reaching an hour mark, so we can safely end here. Thank you so much, all of those who have joined or who are here till the end. And thank you so much, Alex, for doing this. We will be sharing the recording for both the webinars with all of you in an email. And you can also find the poll results there. So that's I guess all. We do have an upcoming webinar coming on October. So do follow us, do follow intive on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and you'll definitely come across an announcement on that pretty soon. So thank you so much. And we are very happy, and we are welcome, for this presentation, and we're gonna, I think, end here. Thank you, folks. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.